and healthy schools, etc. Here are our preliminary allocations for our grant for the 2025-2026 school year. For Title I, we have $3,677,823.15. For Title II, we have $286,439.15. For Title III, we did have an increase this year. We have $91,866. And in Title IV, we have $284,106.23. Our total preliminary allocation for our federal funds through title is $4,340,234.53. This information has been previously shared with the board during our financial future forecast, which was discussed during our September 23rd board meeting. And as a visual for the board, as requested, we have a pie chart of our grant funding. Specifically, we have somewhere around $5.3 million in grant funding. You can see that the Title I with the $3.6 million is the major chunk of our federal title grants. I believe there was inquiry regarding the application statuses of our title grants. So Title I has been submitted. Title II has not been submitted. Title III has been submitted, and Title IV has not been submitted. I believe the board requested an application timeline. I will provide that for you here. On June 30th, 2025, we submitted our pre-application for Title I, II, and IV. That is ahead of the deadline of July 1st, 2025. On August 5th, we received a notification from the IDOE regarding they were in receipt of our application and they were reviewing it. On August 13th, we had applied for EdFlex waiver number 4. We received notification on August 13th that EdFlex waiver number 4 was approved. I will elaborate on our EdFlex waivers later on during this presentation. On August 19th, our pre-application revisions were requested. So for the pre-application process, we turn in the application, it is reviewed by the IDOE, and it is returned if there are some revisions needed, or it's approved. I believe we had somewhere between 7 to 8 revisions that needed to be addressed. Those revisions were worked on between August 19th and approximately August 27th. On August 25th, 2025, the IDOE requested our CSI and TSI information. I will also go over that later on in the presentation. August 27th, our pre-application requests were fulfilled, meaning the 7 to 8 findings or revisions that were requested. And when they were submitted and reviewed, that application, the pre-application, was approved on August 27th, 2025.
Files, take exit
On September 4th, the Title I application window opened. So for the board's understanding, there is a pre-application period where we are given a preliminary dollar amount for funding, and we create and draft activities to submit for our title application. Once it has been approved, we now have the allocation and we attach dollars to the activities which we have described in the pre-application. We were able to start doing that on September 4th. On October 3rd, we were notified that EdFlex waiver number 2 had been approved. Once again, I will go over the EdFlex waivers later on in this presentation. On October 15th, the Title III application was submitted, and it was submitted ahead of the deadline. On October 29th, the Title I application was submitted. There is an approval process that I would like to make sure the board is aware of. All applications, when they are submitted to the IDOE, undergo 2 levels of approval. The first approval is a Tier 1, is reviewed by an initial reader, and then the second is a review by the Director of Federal Grants. It is similar to a process which you might employ in our district as well. Currently, our Title I status Our Title I and Title III are under Tier 1 review. And now, a little word about EdFlex waivers. So EdFlex waivers are what we are allowed to under ESEA, which gives the state of Indiana some flexibility in how our LEA could use grant funds in addition to how they've previously been written. So there are a total of 3 waivers that we can apply for. We typically apply for all 3 if applicable, but we did apply for EdFlex waiver number 2, which gives us increased flexibility in paraprofessional requirements. How does that impact? We have paraprofessionals that are funded through Title I, and having approved EdFlex waiver allows us to hire different paras who may be more qualified to support the needs. If you recall, Title I should address closing achievement gaps. EdFlex waiver number 4 specifically is for Title IV, and this provides increased flexibility in Title IV spending, and we are eligible for this anytime we have over $30,000 in grant funds. We have $286,000 approximately in Title IV, and it allows us to go beyond the traditional scope of Title IV funding. I'll take a very few minutes to go over our application historical data. I believe the board is under the impression that we have never submitted a Title I application late. That is incorrect. School CB Chicago does actually have a few histories of pattern of submitting our application, not by the deadline. In fiscal year 2021 through 2022, under Superintendent Shauna Finley, who was interim at that time, Ms. Simmons was the business manager and the federal grants manager was Cindy Castro. The application was started on July 11th, 2021. The application was submitted October 29th, 2021. It was resubmitted to the IDOE 7 times. If you recall, I explained the approval process. There's a Tier 1 and a Tier 2. At Tier 1, that initial reviewer reviews the application, and if there's any revisions, it is returned. Typically, when that application is returned, hopefully those revisions are addressed in the first time. This indicates that it was not addressed until the 7th time, meaning the district got a final approval on March 29th, 2022. Final approval means that you will be issued an award letter. Fiscal year 2022 through 2023, under Superintendent Dr. Javier Rego, business manager was Ms. Simmons, federal grants manager was Cindy Castro. Application was started October 17th, 2022, and submitted December 6th, 2022. Once again, I believe the board is under the impression historically that we've never turned in an application late. Unfortunately, we do have a practice of not turning in the Title I application on time. We are working with resolution to resolve this to create ourselves a more highly operable and highly functioning organization. It was resubmitted to the IDOE 10 times. If you recall, I explained the Tier 1 and Tier 2 approval process. This means that when it was submitted, it had some revisions that were requested, and it had to be resubmitted 10 times before it was finally approved in April 21st, 2023. With the final approval, I believe, comes the award letter. During fiscal year 2022 through 2023, we had a forfeiture of funds, approximately or exactly $660,653.99. No waiver was applied for during that fiscal year. We also had a forfeiture of funds of $295,041.55. Those funds were forfeited. However, we had applied for that EdFlex waiver. Fiscal year 2024 through 2025, the superintendent was Dr. Stephen Bornay, that would be me. The business manager was Ms. Simmons. At that time, I believe our federal grants director in school improvement, or our federal grants director, had retired, and Mr. Williamson was supporting the school district and submitting our application. Mr. Williams works for Mozzie Education, LLC. He is a consultant that the district hired sometime during the past 2 years to support our grant functions. Application was started July 11, 2024. The application was submitted by Mr. Williamson on August 30th, 2024. It was resubmitted to the IDOE twice. We have received final approval on December 8th, 2024. I believe the board is under the impression that we've never submitted the application for Title I late. That is incorrect. Application historical data for fiscal year 2025-2026. I am the superintendent. Ms. Simmons is the business manager. Ms. Hope Stovall is federal grants manager. Application was started September 4th, 2025. Application submitted October 29th, 2025. It is in its first level or first tier review. So we do not have data on being resubmitted to IDOE. It has not been second tier review, so we do not have any data on when it's finally approved. Ms. Stovall, in her absence, did share some notes from her most recent Director of Federal Funds or Federal Grants and Title meeting. That is for the board's information, just so we know other things going on in the state. The Director of Federal Grants did resign from the IDOE on September 5th. And as a result of that, there has been some challenges in having the second tier approval. As a result of some other challenges or staffing changes that occurred at the IDOE, as a result of some federal edicts, 98% of the state does not have an approved Title I grant. This is information shared with title directors at their meeting on October 30th. I'd like to take a few minutes just to go over some terms for the board's edification. Preliminary allocation, encumbrance, and liquidations, as well as federal accountability. You'll hear me use the term preliminary allocation. That is the term that we received from the IDOE at the beginning of the title application process to let us know that fund. A grant preliminary allocation is an initial estimated amount of grant funding given to a recipient for planning and budgeting purposes before the final amount is determined. The final amount will be shared in the award letter once it is approved. Right now, we're always working on a preliminary allocation. Encumbrance. Encumbrance means to reserve a portion of that allocation, preliminary or otherwise, for future expense or commitment. This is done initially by drafting or creating a purchase order or issuing a contract, but it is before the actual payment is made or services are received. Liquidation. The liquidation period is a time allowed after the grant's project period ends, during which the recipient must draw down funds or spend the money, request money from the vendor or the awarding agency to say that in my application, I said I was going to spend X amount of dollars on this. I have spent X amount of dollars on this, and now I'm requesting reimbursement. During that time, we reconcile all financial expenditures related to the award, return any unobligated or unspent funds to the awarding agency or forfeiture, and we submit all required financial and performance reports. Federal accountability. We are scored based on ESEA, based on ratings of our performance at our state assessment on iLearn and SAT, and as a result of that, we are given federal accountability ratings, comprehensive support and improvement, or CSI, targeted support and improvement, or TSI, and additional targeted support and improvement, ATSI. Schools identified for CSI due to lowest performing group, at least one subgroup performing 5%, and that is a singular or a single year. Targeted support and improvement means over the course of 2 years, that same performance group is underperforming, or that same subgroup is underperforming. Targeted support and improvement schools have 2 years to exit from that status, and that is reflected in school improvement plans. And then finally, additional targeted support and improvement, when you've had a persistent student group who has underperformed for 4 years, and you have 4 years to exit from that status. And so the purpose of me sharing a number of terms is prior to this status update, which are remaining balances. Specifically first for Title I. This is for the fiscal year or grant year of 2025. This is not the fiscal year of 2026. We were awarded or allocated $3,813,551.73. Of that, we have a remaining balance, or when this was shared, which was prior to September 30th, remaining balance of $689,879.76. It was essential or important that we encumber this by September 30th, 2025, and that amount has been fully encumbered. And the next piece is to make sure it is liquidated by December 15th, 2025. So we do not forfeit any funds, but that remaining balance has been encumbered. Title II, Part A, you'll see there's a number of grant years listed because we have a number of grants open. But I will focus on the most pressing grant, which is fiscal year 2022, where we had $370,194.33. Our remaining balance was $60,059.94. It was to be encumbered by 9/30/2025. We encumbered that full amount, and we intend to liquidate it by December 15th. Remaining balance for Title III. Title grant period 2022 to 2024. We are in a 2-year cohort for our Title IIIs. We are awarded $67,932 for the 2022-2024 grant period. We spent $61,703.23. We have $6,228.70 remaining to be reimbursed. And similarly for the 2023-2025 grant period, we were awarded $74,328. We expended $58,859.75, and we have $15,468.25 remaining to be reimbursed. Okay. So as of November 1st, 2025, there are no funds in jeopardy of being forfeited. Impact on corporation. I believe the board wanted to know if there's any impact to the corporation moving forward as a result of the Title I application being delayed. The corporation did implement a hiring freeze at the start of the school year, and it was for some grant-funded positions. And just to clarify, if there was a retirement or resignation in a grant-funded position, whether it was a Title I pair or some other position funded, like a sale, we paused on filling that position. And we did that in the midst of also making sure that we were financially secure with operating and budget expenses. But we have since reviewed and evaluated a number of those staffing and vacancies and resumed hiring for paraprofessionals and other positions, which also are not grant-related or grant-funded. And that is looking at schools on a school-by-school basis to determine the needs and filling of positions. We've been doing that working in close concert with the CFO or Ms. Simmons' office, as well as Human Resources, and talking with our principals about building-based needs. So as of November 1st, 2025, there's no additional impact on the corporation. During my financial futures meeting, which was presentation shared on September 23rd, we talked about a reduction in force. I want to also make sure that we allay the fears of any staff members who may be concerned about a reduction in force. We will be following the board policy. We'll be working closely with the board attorney, as well as our Human Resources Office, as well as our labor attorney, to make sure we are following this policy. That certificated staff selected to be terminated pursuant to this policy, the reduction in force policy, 3131, received the initial notification of possible contract cancellation required between May 1st and July 1st, preceding the proposed cancellation of their contract with the board. So that is this superintendent's promise to all of our staff, whether they are impacted, certificated or non, that they will be notified if there's going to be a reduction in force. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Bonet. Are there any questions out from the audience? Oh, okay. Trustee Smith, you have anything to say?
No.
Okay, I want to go back over something here. I think it was school board meeting September the 28th. And in our minutes, Dr. Bonet, you said that sort of holding off on what are now our next steps until we receive all of our allocations. So we do not have all of our allocations in now. So do we have all our allocations in now?
Are you talking about preliminary allocations?
Pardon?
Are we talking about preliminary allocations?
I'm talking about all the allocation, preliminary, what we have now. I'm speaking of all of them. This is what you said in our
So
school
if
board
it
meeting
will
for
help
September the 28th.
clarify, Madam President, so we've received all of our preliminary allocations from the IDOE. And if you will walk with me down a path, we don't physically receive any of that money until we request reimbursement.
Okay.
So we've said that we have $3.67 million to spend. We have allocated it or encumbered it. We have until a certain period to liquidate it or spend the money. And as we spend the money, we request reimbursement. And then you get the allocation.
Okay. But I'm just reading your notes here compared to what you explained on the screen here. You also said, let's make no mistakes, that the largest chunk of money is the Title I money, and that is our largest federal grant. Mm-hmm. Now, here you have Title I application. You say it was submitted on the 29th, 10/29. But looking at this, there's no seal on here from the Indiana State. The dollars is $3,677,825. There is no date saying from what year this money is to be. And then there's also, all of this says nothing has been approved yet. That's what you have given to the board. You also spoke about a RIF. You did call a RIF here, reduction in force. You had 7 individuals that were supposed to have been RIF'd here July the 17th, but they were not RIF'd. And then at that time here in July also, the CFO, Leila Simmons, started taking monies for $471,698.73 out of operations funds, which is illegal, to pay for Title I because there's no money there, and we've not been in receipt of anything as we speak of today. This is the concern of the board because we do not have any award letters saying that we have anything coming. And then the letter that you gave us, like I said, on the 29th, they says that none of this has not yet been approved. So we're borrowing money to pay for title, and then we don't have the title dollars to give back to operations or either educational funds. So, Mr. Harris, can you expound a little bit on what Steve Dalton's report that he gave us, talking about this money?
I'm familiar with it.
Okay.
Yep. So I guess there's a couple of things that are going on. I think that the board president did express what the concerns were of the board, that we're borrowing funds on money that we're not sure whether we're getting or not. So obviously that's the primary concern. And then the secondary concern is whether or not there's any curriculum or school programming that'll be affected negatively by that. And I think that's the reason for the request for this overview, so that not only the board, but also the public and all the staff can feel comfortable, not only with any issues regarding to a RIF, but also issues related to the programs and curriculum being provided to our scholars. So that's that. Separately, I think there's the issue regarding just our financial position overall. And with Mr. Dalton, one of our financial advisors, giving us, the financial picture that, hey, there's going to be a need to tighten our belts and that revenue will be decreasing. We'll really feel it in 2027, but it's something to prepare for now. The idea of borrowing money against anticipated funds that aren't yet approved obviously
Right.
would be alarming to the board.
That's right.
Because one of their primary roles is to be a steward of the money. So
Right.
I think that's the reason we're here and why, in particular, our board president is so concerned about where things stand.
Thank you, Attorney Harris, for clarifying. I believe there was a little bit of confusion regarding the 7 issues that President Gibson King shared immediately following, and me trying to connect the dots between the purpose of those questions. So thank you for elucidating on that. First off, I do want to reply that the financial forecast that was shared during that September board meeting, I received no feedback from the board. I believe there was recently scheduled a finance committee to address that. So I will wait to address that during a finance committee and then do a subsequent board meeting where we can specifically talk about finances. It's always appreciative if we're going to have questions regarding finances to actually direct them directly to the superintendent in forms of feedback or through a board meeting or some type of meeting. I've received no feedback regarding that. Secondly, we are addressing some past practices that not just School City, but other corporations have had. So there is a past practice of federal funding is that we spend money in anticipation of a grant. That has been probably the past practice before I got here, and is not an uncommon past practice in other school districts and corporations. I understand the board's concern about continuing that practice without having the actual funds. So there are some things beyond our control. So do we live in a period of uncertainty where even though the IDOE has said, the federal government said we're going to give you $3.6 million, and is there a possibility that it might happen and they might take it back? Absolutely. That's just the uncertain period that we live in. But we operate knowing that in some portions, we'll say in good faith, we have traditionally continued to run schools by borrowing from the operations fund. And when we request reimbursement, we pay back the operations fund when we get that money back from the federal. So that addresses that. There were programs or curriculums that may or may not have been impacted that were going to be eliminated or reduced prior to the submission of the Title I application. A number of those programs were evaluated by the curriculum team, and we had made that decision to do that late spring in anticipation of, is this program being maximized and used? So that was independent of the federal funding. It was fortuitous that had been done because we had more money in the grant to do other things which would support closing achievement gaps.
Can I make a comment, Madam President?
Sure.
I would just have a recommendation, just since we're having the discussion. I think it might be helpful for everyone involved if we implement a couple of things. I think if there's a policy that specifically speaks to the issue of borrowing from operations
Right.
to fund other areas of the district's operations, I think that would be helpful. So if the policy committee could take a look at doing that, I think specifically what that would do is give Ms. Simmons some direction on how much can you borrow in order to do this? Like how much is enough? When does the red flag get thrown? When are we concerned? And then secondly, it probably would be a good practice if by resolution we approve interfund loans so that along the way of doing that pursuant to the policy, we can have these discussions we're having now on the front end as opposed to having them on the back end.
Those are great recommendations, Attorney Harris.
Thank you, Attorney Harris, but it's reading here from Mr. Steve Dalton, we cannot borrow no title dollars from operations or education. Now, we could borrow from one education, operation, education, but you cannot take no federal dollars and pay these people. That's not what this money is for. And as I'm saying here, this is what they are doing, okay? And this started, like I said, it started here when Mr. Bonet called for a RIF. He didn't do the RIF because of a certain individual that was put on this RIF. So what happened was, after that, then Mrs. Simmons started paying money from the operations fund to cover, and she said it at the school board meeting on the 14th. Did you all hear her say that? education fund. You heard her say that, right? And that was illegal. I'm not gonna keep on saying it, you know, what's happening here, okay? Well, according to what Mrs. Dalton says here in our report, okay? I'm just talking about what we have been given as a board. She's already moved $471,000, Helen, and she's gonna have to continue to move this money. The reason being is because we do not have what we've been looking for and what we as a board have been asking for. We do not have an award letter. So, okay, so let me say what I got to say now, okay? Because everybody else ain't been saying nothing. They've been quiet as church mouse, as we said in the neighborhood, okay? They don't want to say anything about this money. So everybody is afraid. We have a lot of things going on in our society as today. Like I say, we have ICE. We have a shutdown today. Nobody's going to have no food snaps. And then we have all this going on in our schools. But this ain't the start of it, as I keep saying over and over. We have a lot to do. Our children, I'm here advocating for them. I ain't talking about no grown people now. So I'm advocating for them because I'm their voice. So if we don't start getting better with what it is that we're supposed to be doing for our children, they're going to lose. They're losing right now as we speak. So Dr. Bonet, we asked for the individual to be here to explain some of these questions that are still unanswered. We don't have no notification letter. I don't even think we have a policy, because if we had a policy as to speaking to what you said, I think we would have had it. Okay, so right now,
Begging your pardon, Madam
Excuse me.
President, perhaps you had missed this during the presentation, but the award letters had never been issued historically earlier than even today's date. If you allow me.
Yeah.
So part of that presentation was to hopefully shed some light on your insistence on an award letter, which hasn't been produced yet or approved by the state.
Well, I'm speaking of what I got. I wasn't on the board then, so they was doing all kind of stuff back there. That's why we're in the trouble we're in right now. But I got an award letter right now. That's what I know what I'm talking about. And I have two award letters from individuals that received monies from the state. They got an award letter, said that it has been approved. So what the last thing that you gave to the board, Dr. Bonet, the Title I dollars, and it said all this $3 million and what some odd dollars, it has not been approved. So we don't know if we're gonna get this money or not. So that's all I have to say. Now I'm gonna go to our public meeting here. Helen, stand by.
And Madam President, you are correct that it's not been approved. I believe during the presentation, that was what was communicated.
We
So
just
there is
got
a
this on the
process
29th,
for
Dr.
approval.
Bonet. We just got this not approved letter on October the 29th. The board just got it. But we've been told. like I
Incorrect
said-
statement.
Like I said in your.
Or
here
if
it
not
is
an
right
incorrect
here.
statement, incorrect understanding of the concept from the Madam
No,
President.
I'm just speaking of what I have here. So we got this letter October the 29th to tell us that this money was not approved. But you said.
Madam President, I believe you're asking for evidence and you're not reading properly what the document says.
Helen Steinbeck,
I
please.
gave you a document that said we have submitted
I know you
the
did.
application,
I
and on
know
the
you did.
application says not yet approved,
You did-
which
right.
is the status of the process.
Right, but you spending money that you shouldn't be spending, is all I'm saying. You don't know how much money you're gonna get back. You don't know if don't let Trump find out we in this shape. You don't know what we're gonna get back, Dr. Bonet. That's all I'm saying. So Helen Steinbeck, please.
Helen Steinbach, 5207 East 73rd Avenue, Maryville, Indiana. To speak to something that you just said, Ms. Gibson King, on February 13th, our first district Congressman Frank Mervan called me personally to ask me how the implication of closing the Department of Education federally might affect the teachers that teach in East Chicago
Right.
and the students that we support in East Chicago. And so I was able to share some things with him in anticipation that things like that might happen. And then unfortunately, because of the state of Indiana, it's hard to know how things would go on if that were to happen 100% where the Department of Education is closed. So we don't know, like Dr. Bournet said, but I also think that it's important to hold people accountable for the job that they're supposed to be doing, and things that need to be submitted by a certain date need to be submitted by a certain date. And if they are held with the task of finding funding outside of maybe those title grants, I would ask our director, if she were here, what additional grants for funding have been applied for. And then also in the areas of school improvement, what has she addressed as the director?
Thank you, Helen. Mr. Linda Randolph, please.
Linda Randolph, 4437 Alder Street. My concern is the culture and the climate right now because of issues such as this. You've got a lot of challenges going on. This is one of those issues that's causing division. And for those who spoke, when you know better, you do better. So if we know we're late all the time, why would we be late now? If we know we need whatever you said, attorney, you were here last year, why are we talking about it now?
That's right.
So let's come together to try to bring some closure to this because it has an atmosphere of worry, atmosphere of concern, an atmosphere you're paying all these dollars and you're still doing the same old thing. So let's come together so that we can make this the best school in the area. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with that, because we only have like 3,000 and some odd kids in our school district. And I don't, for the life of me, I don't understand why we can't educate these kids. That's a small group. I do not understand, and we get a lot of money that comes through here. But it's all wasted. It's not put on our children.
I'm sorry, I had one more thing on my paper I don't want to miss, talking about how are we handling our parochial schools? Because if we late, they late.
That's right. We
So
got to
how
let-
are they funding themselves financially? Are we borrowing from Operation Education, wherever you're going, whatever pot? Are we going in that pot to take care of the parochial schools? Those are issues that concern taxpayers.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
so
can you
I
answer
say
that,
you know
Dr. Bonet?
better, you know timelines, you got people in place, let's do better. Thank you.
Can you answer that question, Dr. Bonet? Because I did have something saying about us not don't have this money. They are affected too. St. Stan's, I think Casimir.
Ms. Stovall will be best suited to. Ms. Stovall will be best suited to answer that question.
Okay, okay. Okay, well then, well, I'm glad you all took the time to come out, but I wanted the community to come out, and I did request of a robocall, but that didn't happen either. So, I'm glad that you all came out, so we're gonna adjourn our meeting. Madam Secretary, roll call, please. Trustee Gomez?
Yes.
Oh, excuse me, Jesse, did you have any questions?
No, I can speak later on in
Okay. all
exec
right.
session.
Okay. Yes. All right, you all are welcome. I'm gonna just have a minute with you, Dr.